Hello everyone, CrystalFissure's here, and welcome to, well, a forest in Finland, Vanta to be specific, which is the perfect set piece, a jungle forest theme, to talk about Crash Bandicoot. Now, Crash Bandicoot in both Skylanders, Imaginators I think it's called, and Crash Bandicoot PS4 Remastered. I don't think there's really any title for it, it's just all three games remastered. Now, I know already a few people have sort of messaged me and asked me, what do you think about this? And look, let's just say the day before the announcement, I was pretty much in a state of, I just cannot believe that they would possibly bring back Crash in a Skylanders perspective. I mean, deep down I almost knew they'd do it because I thought marketing wise, Activision have absolutely no care for their consumer base. They're 100% profit driven, and look, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but they're 100% about profit. They have absolutely no integrity in terms of making games for passion, which was, you know, very much a thing of the old days, where your profit is of course very important, but then, you know, there's passion in games that were being made that simply aren't there anymore. But I digress. The point is, Crash Bandicoot was announced for a HD remake. Now, what do I think about this? Plenty of people are excited, others like Ratchet 5 are not. I am somewhere sort of in the middle about that. People want to know what I think. I think that to an extent, it's not the worst thing that could happen. It's definitely not the worst thing that could happen. The worst thing that could happen would be Crash Bandicoot being in Skylanders and that's it. Right, and then trying to use that as to drive up sales, and then maybe if it's a success they could bring back their own game. But as Ratchet sort of said, Ratchet 5 talked about how he wasn't even that big on them bringing back a new Crash game as much, and I kind of agree. I'm sort of again in the middle there, where I always did prefer Spyro to Crash, so I don't exactly think that and the typical ideas what I think a modern day Crash would be, unfortunately, I think would be more like the first three, which in a way is a step backwards. Now that sounds very controversial given the fact that I'm more of a purist when it comes to gameplay. I do love the first three games. The second one is my favorite by far, probably one of the best 3D platformers of all time. However, today, when you see games like Twinsanity, which tried to do something different with the series and would have properly if their game files weren't wiped, if the servers weren't completely destroyed, whatever happened, basically they lost all their work, had to basically cut like, I think it was like 20 levels from the game. Anyway, point is, if Twinsanity couldn't, you know, if they're not going to do something like Twinsanity, then it sort of means that maybe Crash wouldn't be as much of a success today. But I guess that doesn't really matter. I guess the point is that right now we got to focus on HD remakes. Now, graphically, control-wise, musically, they have to get every single one of these things right. Vicarious Visions, I think, are working on it. They also do Skylanders. They have worked on, was it Nitro Kart and the two GBA games. Now, the two GBA games are pretty good. They had that similar Crash style. It did feel like a Crash game, albeit on a 2D platforming device, mostly. There's a few sort of different 2.5D sort of levels. And then, as well as that, you had Crash Nitro Kart, which, thanks to, what was his name? Joe Guy, you know what his name is. Joe and Charles Zembillis. That's such an insult to Joe, by the way, because he is an absolute legend, should not be forgotten for his contributions to Crash, and there I have forgotten his name. But anyway, Charles and that, they actually were the guys, you know, partially responsible for why Crash Nitro Kart, if you honestly look at it, is probably the best looking Crash game to date. It's the one that actually looks the most like Crash in a more modern or non-PS1 setting. Now, they have to get the graphics right, they have to get the style right. I don't think they're developing it on Unreal Engine, I don't think they're giving it that hyper-realistic feel. This is just sort of a guess. I don't think they're going to give it that hyper-realistic feel. That sort of background graphic we saw at E3, that did look, oh, that looked interesting. That was like a shipwreck sort of thing. That looked okay. I think that they can get this right. Vicarious Visions and Skylanders in general. Skylanders is not a bad looking game. I don't think anyone has ever said, I'm hypercritical of that game, but I will never say that it absolutely looks like shit. I will say that, yeah, it looks pretty good, and in fact, with proper level design and actual consequences like being able to fucking die when you fall off a cliff, as opposed to having a fucking box there so you can't fall off, or actually having platforming elements, hey, that would be great. Skylanders would be awesome, but right now it's not. Musically as well, look at Ratchet & Clank. The newest Ratchet & Clank game came out, and that was quite a success, and that was sort of a barometer in a way for this, because since that reboot was a success, if Crash is a success, that could mean good things for the series. But one of the weakest aspects of that game was the shit soundtrack. I'm sorry to whoever made it. I understand that what you were going for, but the other soundtrack by David, the original game, it was just, everyone is probably in agreement that it was one of the most, it just made the game feel cool. Like if you remember playing as a kid, like having those sort of breakbeats, and back when I was younger, I didn't really know what breakbeats were, but I remember listening to the soundtrack and hearing chords and like synths and shit. Like it was techno, breakbeat, there's ambient elements, there's just so many cool elements to the soundtrack. And same with Crash Bandicoot in that melodic sort of style, but not goofy melodic to the level where it just sounds like a fucking joke. Like for example, compare Ape Escape 1 and 3 to 2, right? The soundtracks, first 1 and 3 done by Soichi Terada, right? There's plenty of cheesy melodies and sort of happy-go-lucky melodies in the first game and the third game, but the second one that wasn't done by him completely takes that sort of cheesy melody and just makes the entire soundtrack be that. Basically no chords, or very weak chords, crappy sound design, just some weird sort of like just, that's what it sounded like, just some like just fuck off. I'm sorry, just fuck off with that shit. That, you know, that, no. So if Crash Bandicoot, if all of a sudden, you know, you go from, you know, sounds like, you know, like sooner or later with the in the sewer levels with all the sort of sound effects and the, you know, that kind of thing. If you instead turn it into alright, if you turn it into that, it just turns the series into just every other game. Like it basically puts the demographics from adult to kid, and then again that middle ground is dead, and it just basically puts it just for kids, which would be shit. Now, Crash in Skylanders, on the other hand, it was inevitable, it was gonna happen. I was surprised, and then I wasn't surprised, whatever. What's interesting though is that they're actually implementing gameplay concepts from Crash Bandicoot in it, so it's sort of like a special actual Crash Bandicoot edition. So like there'll be crates and stuff like that, TNT, Aku Aku, and as someone said on the Spyro subreddit, why did they not give this same level of care to fucking Spyro, the guy that actually made Skylanders go from that sort of just unknown random toy series to, oh, actual mascot series game. You know, it propped up its name value even a little bit. Some people like to argue, oh, Spyro, you know, Skylanders would be a success without it. And yes, it would have been. But Spyro gave it that initial hype and like sort of that, whoa, Spyro is back. Anyway, they didn't give a shit about Spyro. They had, you know, they did have Sparks in it as sort of this paid sort of collectible bullshit, and they had other minor concepts, but overall, like even the design of the new Crash, it kind of looks a bit weird. But I think that some of that, and usually I'd be harsh on this, some of that is the fact that Crash did look fucking goofy on a PS1, but there's only so many polygons on a PlayStation 1. Whereas if you actually look at maybe, if you look at games, you know, more modern games and stuff like that, that's sort of goofy, translating that sort of 2D sort of very basic face into a PS4 sort of graphics, it is going to look a little bit weird. So I'm overall not, I know there's a bit of a meme like the sort of goofy face that he has, but I think that's not a major concern for me. I'm not like disgusted with it. I don't love it, but I'm not going to say it's absolute garbage. But to me, it seems like they put a lot of care to Crash actually being in it, and that's because Vicarious Visions obviously have a soft spot. I remember the famous, pretty much Vicarious Visions were actually going to do a reboot sort of thing of Crash, we believe, Me, Ratchet 5 and Nintendo Gen 64, we did a podcast, as Ratchet 5 said, about that like picture behind, and we speculated and blah blah blah. So you know, if anyone's going to handle Crash, Vicarious Visions being the ones to do it is not only a nice throwback, but honestly a good challenge for them. And I think that would I be happy to, after saying all this and rambling, and you know, I don't do cuts, I mean I might cut it a little bit, but I don't do cuts. But even if, you know, I'm not like a massive fan of all this, like I'm not like a massive fan of the reboots just because I'm worried about what they could do, if anyone is going to have control of it other than like Naughty Dog or like even Sucker Punch or Sanzaru Games, like it would be Vicarious Visions. Like they are in the top 5 people that you would have to handle Crash, and I would love to see them you know, give a 3D game a go if they did do a new Crash. If the sales go well enough, that'd be cool. Now, one thing and other people talk about is just in general HD remakes and sort of the money grabbing aspect of it, and whether doing that just gives the company money and then they think, oh, let's just do more HD remakes, let's never create any original content, you know, original content like new games entirely. And that's the concern with a theoretical Spyro HD remake, which I may do a video about later. Again, with me, it's like I almost am not interested in that much either. Now, if they did announce it, look, it'd be better than what they've done with fucking Skylanders and Spyro. Like, objectively, it would be better than Skylanders, because even though people say, oh, Skylanders is technically a Spyro game, the one thing I like to say on arguments or forums or anything is, to me, Spyro is as much, or Skylanders is as much a Spyro game as Pokemon is a fucking Weedle game or a Charmander game. Like, he's just one aspect of it. Like, I'm pretty sure Spyro is like one of 300 Skylanders. He's completely irrelevant. So a HD remake of Spyro, which is a bit off topic. Look, I wouldn't love it. I wouldn't be like super, unless it was amazing. I wouldn't be like freaking out or anything like that. I would prefer, you know, a new game in the older style. But also the whole emergence of the texture hacks and like additional hacks, and possibly, hopefully one day being able to properly edit Spyro. People may think, oh, wouldn't you like more games? I would not mind just making new levels, or people making new levels and hacks. Games that were released on the PC have completely new life breathed on them from, you know, thanks to the modding community. Games like, you know, Fallout games or Thief. Just ask Johnny Natrum about Thief, how many different fan-made missions there are in that game, completely keeping the game playable after, you know, 15 plus years basically. And that's ultimately what I'd love to be able to do with the first 3 Spyro games. That'd be crazy if we could do that. Create new. So to me, HD remakes aren't as exciting as new content would be. Maybe back in the day I may have been a bit more reversed because I was not a fan of The Legend of Spyro, but in general, you know, now that texture hacks have came out and stuff like that, and you know, and same with Crash, if you know, Mandude and other people work on Crash Bandicoot related hacks with the original content, the original games, I would not be I would be the first ones playing that kind of thing. So overall, in this incredibly rambling Dave Meltzer-esque video, where that like Dave Meltzer, I go off on a lot of tangents and then just like don't even finish the point half the time. But yeah, he's a wrestling journalist for anyone wondering. But yeah, just like Dave and his stuttering and sometimes slurred or rambly speech, I shall conclude by saying that is this bad news? No, it's not. Am I excited? I'm somewhere in the middle. Would it make me buy a PS4? No, but if they did Ape Escape or something like that, yes. I probably will end up buying a PS4 anyway for like Ratchet and Clanks and like there's a few other games I'd like to play on the console. So it's not like a console buy. If they announce a new Crash game though, maybe, and look promising, maybe. But yeah, overall, for the Crash Bandicoot fan base sort of as a whole, this is great news. This is something new. We haven't heard shit for years. So for the Crash fan base, it's great. I'm not overly excited, but I can see where people are. I just hope we keep our expectations at a reasonable level and don't I'm hoping that the game's unplayable piece of shit, because the last Activision game that brought back a series and sort of tried to remake the mechanics was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, and that game was completely panned because it was rushed clearly, and the same thing could happen. It's happened with Crash. It's even happened with Crash, where shit's been rushed. So again, to go back to where I start, I have absolutely zero faith in a company like Activision. The only thing that keeps me in any form of sort of excitement or hype is the fact that Sony are clearly involved with this, at least, yeah, with the whole PS4 exclusive and stuff like that. But yeah, good luck guys, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and hopefully some more opinion pieces to come in the future. See you later.